When the internet began, bulletin board services, or BBS, became the first online communities of the so-called information superhighway. Using their phone lines, people logged in from all over America to talk about sports, games, movies, and on one BBS in particular, share their ghost stories. Over time, those communities all went dark, except for one lone server that continues to operate somewhere in an unknown part of Pennsylvania's Rust Belt. A relic of the 1990s, veiled in mystery, it is a digital archive of humanity's strangest encounters with the unknown, as told by the people who experienced them. My name is Brandon Schexnayder, and you are listening to Fear Daily.
Subject, Roots. User, Easy Rider. Posted, October 19th, 1996.
I should have thrown that picture away. I've thought about that more times than I can count. If I just left it in the truck or tossed it in the trash, maybe things would be different, but I didn't. I showed it around, I made calls, I let it get in my head, and now Daryl's after me. It didn't start big, just little things, the kind you almost talk yourself out of noticing. The first was my tire. Driver's side rear, flat as a pancake one morning before work. Not just slashed, just deflated. Valve cap gone. A week later, I noticed a long scratch low on the passenger side near the trim. Looked like it had been done with a key. Real deliberate. I figured it was just bad luck until I found the note. Tucked under the windshield wiper, torn from the classified section of the Jackson Sun, black marker, block letters. Believe it. That's all it said. I didn't show it to anyone, didn't even keep it, just stood there with the paper in my hand for a long time, then folded it up and dropped it in the bottom of the trash like it never happened. But it kept happening. Daryl started acting strange at work. Wouldn't look at me, wouldn't say much. When he did talk, it was short, like he was holding something in his jaw. One day, I passed by his locker and it was wide open, empty except a little wooden cross pinned to the back wall with a thumbtack. His name tag was gone, and I asked if he was leaving, and he just shrugged. "Just making space," he said, eyes on the floor. 2 nights later, he jumped me in the lot. I was heading out late, still wiping grease off my hands, reached the truck, stuck the key in, and next thing I knew, my head was slamming into the door. Stars, gravel in my mouth. I couldn't breathe for a second, and my ears rang. I rolled over, and there he was, Daryl, standing over me, not yelling, not even looking angry, just sort of hollow. "You should have let it be," he said. I tried to sit up, and he kicked me in the ribs, hard. Everything went sideways. For a second, I thought he'd broken something. My vision blurred at the edges, and my teeth buzzed like I'd bitten into live wire. "You don't get to ask questions about things that ain't yours," he said. "That girl, what happened to her, it's done." He crouched down after that, pressed something cold to the side of my face. Took me a second to realize it was a coin, an old one. Looked like it had been filed smooth on both sides. "You ever hear about paying the ground to stay quiet?" he asked. Then he stood up and walked off into the dark like he hadn't just assaulted a man who'd been his coworker. I sat on the pavement for a long while after that, just breathing. Every inhale felt like broken glass in my side, and when I finally got myself up and drove home, I didn't go inside right away. Just sat in the truck with the door cracked, listening to the insects and trying to understand what the hell just happened. I wanted to believe it was a one-time thing, something he'd regret in the morning, but I knew better. Next morning, there was another note under my door. Stop digging. Same handwriting, same paper, dirt smudged across the bottom edge like it had been dragged across a field. I didn't go to work, and I don't know if Daryl's still showing up or not. I've taken to driving at night again, no real destination. Sometimes I circle the sheriff's office. Sometimes I find myself drifting down county roads I don't remember turning on to. A couple of nights ago, I ended up behind an old church somewhere outside Parsons. No signs, no cars, just a pale steeple in the dark and the sound of something shifting in the leaves behind it. I didn't stay. I tell myself I'm just clearing my head, but I know I'm not. I'm still looking for that fence, that curb, the place in that photo. I haven't told anyone what happened in the lot, not my mom, not the guys at work. I don't even think I could. I just sound crazy, but it happened, and since then, something's shifted. Last Thursday, I stepped into a diner off Highway 20 for coffee. One of those places where the waitresses still wear powder blue aprons and everyone turns when the bell above the door rings. I sat near the back and stirred sugar into a chipped mug, watching traffic pass out the window. When I looked up, a man was staring at me from two booths over, late 60s, thin with a gray beard and yellowed eyes like river water. I didn't recognize him, did nod, but he kept watching. When the waitress came to refill my cup, I turned to glance back at him, and he was gone. I didn't hear no bell, didn't see him leave, just an empty booth and a check still sitting in the plastic tray. The truck's been quieter lately, though. No new scratches, no more valve trouble, but I check it constantly, like I'm expecting something else to fall out from under the dash. Some nights I leave the lights on, front porch, kitchen, even the bathroom, but still, it doesn't help. The dark still finds its way in. I hear things, soft knocks on the siding, the faint shuffle of boots on pavement outside. One night, I swear I saw a shadow pass between the streetlight and my bedroom window, just tall enough to block the edge of the curtain. I think Daryl's scared. That's what makes this worse. It'd be easier if he was just angry or mean or drunk, but he's scared of the picture, of what it stirred up, of whatever people around here have worked so hard to forget. I think Samantha Cole was never meant to be found again. Not her picture, not her name, and definitely not the truth.
Subject, out of bounds. User, RR Square All. Posted, May 2nd, 1996.
Being police in a ski town is a pain in the ass, and don't let anyone tell you any different. Every year, the snow brings with it the gift of coked-out frat boys, drunken Australians, and families not quite rich enough for Aspen. They've all got chips on their shoulders too. You ever notice that? These people fly halfway across the country to come here, sometimes even further, and when they get here, do they just ski? They absolutely do not. They fight, they grab asses they shouldn't, they break things. Worst of all, They ski out of bounds, forcing a bunch of hard-working people out of their beds at unsociable hours to find them. Each season, we have to rescue a solid 24 of these thrill-seeking dimwits, and I'd say we're batting 1,000 as far as finding them alive and well, minus a frostbitten toe here or there. Our batting average dips if you count the people who chose to ski down the back of Phillips Trail, which is why we don't. There are no official figures, and no one in town will ever talk to an outsider about it. Therefore, none of those deaths exist. As for the ones who survive, their stories are so unbelievable that it never goes anywhere, the odd National Enquirer feature aside. Take the kid who someone brought into the station house this morning, for example, Scott. Scott was a good-looking blonde kid, 6'2", and built like a brick shithouse. In any other situation, I'd have said, that kid's a bruiser, and I bet before last night, he'd have agreed. Then, he and his buddy Derek went off trail on Phillips. It had been a slow morning before Scott arrived. My deputy, Clark, was out picking up some coffee creamer at the A&P, and I was going over reports from the night before. We used to have an event in town called the Great Race that I fucking hated. Imagine living in Caddyshack, except everyone was either the Gopher or Billy Murray trying to blow the place to hell. While it was running, the evening shift reports would be 4 or 5 times the stack I was leafing through when I heard tires screech outside the station. Not a minute later, some tourist in a top-dollar purple ski suit burst in through the front door, lugging a shivering blonde frat boy-looking type who was soaked through to the skin. "Excuse me, officer, this man needs assistance." The tourist was very serious and had probably practiced that line on the way over. I looked over at Janice, our receptionist, who was already on her way to the storage closet for our cold weather kit: blankets, warm clothes, chemical heating pads. I put my hands on the frat boy's shoulders. He was ice cold. "Don't worry, son, we're gonna take care of you." His eyes were vacant, like he wasn't all there. Janice was back, standing at the door to the squad room with the bag slung over one shoulder. "You go follow Janice there and do as she tells you. When you're dry, we'll get all this sorted out, okay?" The kid nodded, though I'd bet money he hadn't really heard any of it. After he and Janice had disappeared into the bag, I turned to look at the tourist. Now that the crisis was over, he looked deflated, as if he thought the whole thing would be a bigger deal. "Is he a friend of yours?" The tourist shook his head. "No, sir. I saw him walking, how rough a shape he was in, and picked him up. He never said a word, just got right in. I didn't know where to take him, but you guys are closer than the hospital." I nodded. "Where did you spot him?" He crossed his arms. "That's the crazy part. I got lost up on the back rounds around the mountain trying to get to the cabin my wife and I are renting. The signs are all buried under snow, you know. He was walking next to the road in the middle of nowhere. Best I can figure, he came down off the back of Phillips Trail." Shit. Time to wrap this up. I clapped the tourist on his purple shoulder, hero style. "Well, you did a great thing today, my friend. That fella might not have made it without you." He beamed. "You really think so?" "Oh yes, absolutely. There's nothing and no one out that way. You saved a man's life. We'll look after him from here. You run along and enjoy your day." The hero, now relieved of his duty, the tourist practically floated out of the station house doors. Watching his Subaru pull away, I was about to run to the cot room when Clark came in with the coffee creamer. I filled him in on what had just happened. He buried his face in his hands. His brother had gotten lost off the back of Phillips, too, a long time ago. I took the creamer and fixed him a coffee, leaving it next to him before going to the rear of the station. Our guys use the cot room if they need to log some Z's on slow nights, among other things. By the time I got there, the blonde kid was sitting on the cot in question in dry clothes, a thick quilted blanket wrapped around him. As I walked in, Janice was taking a cup of coffee out of his hands because they were shaking too much to hold it still. "Anything, Jan?" She pursed her lips and paused before speaking. She knew. "This is Scott," she said. "Scott and his friend Derek were up on the hill yesterday and went out of bounds on the Phillips Trail. It's quite a story." The kid finally spoke in my presence, his voice so high it bordered on hysterical. "It's not just a story. It happened. That thing killed Derek. That thing killed Derek." He trailed off, rocking gently. Janice got the kid to lay down on the cot. In situations like this, as wired as survivors seemed, all it takes is warm clothes and a soft bed to slow them down. Adrenaline crash is a real thing. Once he had passed out, Janice and I left him there, softly closing the door behind us. We went to the squad room where the only people who might hear us already knew what we were going to say. "Well?" She cocked her head. "What do you mean, well? You know exactly what happened." "Tell me anyways." She sighed. "They're from Texas, him and Derek. Here to ski, of course. They've been here for 3 days, which is apparently long enough to get bored with the Black Diamond runs. So they decided to go out of bounds." Janice put her hands up in a "what are you gonna do" kind of pose. They went out of bounds. Halfway down, the mountain levels out. They lose their bearings in the forest. Everyone who skis down the back of Phillips loses their bearings, and no one knows why. The closest explanation we've had is a magnetic anomaly. Even the genius who came up with that couldn't expand on it past vague muttering about how magnets affect compasses. Personally, even if no one else likes to say it, I think it has to do with what lives back there in those trees. Janice kept going, telling me a story we'd heard too many times. He says they were walking through the forest for what felt like hours. Then, as it got dark out, they started hearing knocking sounds like something was banging on the trees. Maybe an hour after that, the rocks started flying at them out of nowhere. He says Derek took one on the chin hard enough to draw blood. They stopped after that. Sure, because blood marks the choice. When it got full dark, he and Derek started to hear grunting sounds following them through the trees. Nothing visible, not right away. Just grunts and wheezing. Jesus, Jack, they didn't even see it coming. From the next room over, Scott started screaming. We rushed over, pushing open the door to find him curled up in the fetal position, screaming no, over and over. Janice tried to comfort him, but it didn't do any good. His voice was hoarse by now, his vocal cords shredded. Still, he screamed no until suddenly he wasn't making any sound at all. His jaw snapped shut, the muscles in the side of his face clenched like an electrical current was going through him. His torso began jerking spastically. He was having a seizure. Janice told me to go call Doc Eddie, so I left the room to do just that. Not 6 steps out the door, she called me back. She was sitting on the cot next to the boy who was no longer moving. "Is he?" She nodded, her eyes closed. This isn't uncommon among those who survive going out of bounds off Phillips. The magnetic anomaly might be a mystery, but this isn't. It's fear that kills them. fear of what they've seen, of how small they feel in comparison, Janice pulled the blanket up over Scott's face and laid a hand on his chest while saying a prayer. We left him there with the lights on. Clark was on the phone to the paramedics already. They'd be here soon. I turned to Janice. "What's the rest of it?" She shrugged. "Same old story, Jack. All the noise stopped, the grunts, the wind, everything, and then something that looked like a 10-foot-tall gorilla on steroids rushed them from the dark. It smashed trees out of the way with its bare hands. Derek tried to fight it. He squared up, is how Scott said it. It pulped his face without even trying. Then it ate him alive." Same old story. Every time more than one person goes out of bounds in that part of the mountain, they get lost until it chooses which of them at once. Then it exacts its toll. One survivor is always left, maybe as a warning, I don't know. It kills savagely, then gets close enough to the survivor there can be no mistaking what it is and what they're not. Then it leaves. Different cultures call it different things. Yaren, Yowie, Yeti, Sasquatch. Here on the mountain, we call it boss of the forest because whether he's eating us like cattle or we're cleaning up his mess, it sure feels like we're all working for him.
Fear Daily is an independent podcast hosted by Brandon Schexnayder and written by Brennan Storr, with Joanna Smith serving as the consulting editor, audio production by Rachel Boyd and sound design by Southern Gothic Media. This podcast is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are either products of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or to real events or locations, is entirely coincidental. Ad-free versions of Fear Daily are available now on your favorite podcast apps. For more information, visit feardaily.com. But move fast, before the server goes offline.